Hello everyone and welcome back to Rob Races and Rebuilds. Today, the Dumpster Fire Budget SI is getting its new motor. Before we can put the motor in its new home, we need to do a little bit of work. We've already gone through and cleaned this up in the previous episode, but we need to maybe paint a few of the rustier subframe areas and fix a few small components that bother my OCD. Since the last episode, I've also gone ahead and pulled the transmission off of the old motor. I did give it a quick cleaning, although it didn't clean up that great. I took off our old clutch and inspected it, and we actually have a pretty high quality clutch made by Vallejo, and it is in really nice shape, which is a total win because we'll be able to reuse that. The flywheel has a few marks on it, like it's seen a touch of heat. That's probably due to the motor running so you almost had to slip the clutch just a little bit sometimes to keep the car running. So it's nothing I'm worried about. There's no like color or anything. I'm not even going to bother resurfacing it. I marked the orientation that everything came off, and I'm going to reinstall it right back the way it was. That way all this material has already bedded with itself and it should work flawlessly like it did with the old engine. I am, however, going to replace the throwout bearing. I'm going to put the OEM Honda throwout bearing in. The one that's in it is a little squeaky and I just don't trust it to last a long time, so we're going to do the right thing, put the Honda one in. Here's our half shaft and cover. We have our inspection plate. I have to clean up all of these parts before we're ready to install the transmission. But the one thing was, which if you had watched the previous episodes, you'll know I was saying that there was a lot of evidence that someone had been in there before changing the clutch, which the car has a recent clutch, so that was correct. But they did a lot of stuff wrong. So I honestly want to say almost every single bolt on the bell housing was incorrect. Yeah, everyone. The bolts for the half shaft, these special collared ones, they were installed in the correct position, surprisingly, but they were finger tight. Yikes. And just things like that. The throwout bearing was way over greased, which caused some grease splatter on the pressure plate, so I want to clean that up as well. There's just a laundry list of things like that I would like to clean up, so I need to spend some time, go through my bolt bins, source all the correct hardware so that when we put this tranny on the new motor, it's actually done to a proper OEM spec. All right, that's enough jibber jabber. I'm going to source all the hardware and parts we need to put this thing back together in my parts car, things I have laying around in bolt bins, etc. I'm going to find everything, get it all laid out, and I'll catch up with you guys when I'm at that point so we can actually start working on the car. Alrighty guys, I have dug through Rob's 8th Gen Emporium and I've found everything I need. So let's get started with the transmission side mount. The mount that came out of the car ended up tearing, as you can see. Big old hole. That's junk. But I found this one. This is out of one of my parts cars. So I got that. You'll notice the driver's side mount here as well with the driver's side bracket. So there's nothing wrong with the driver's side mount in this car other than it's covered in surface rust. I don't really feel like going through the effort of sanding and painting that, so it's easier for me just to swap out another mount. Over here you'll notice the resonator for the airbox. This goes behind here. This one has been cut open and modified to be a Ram Air style. That used to be in Shingo, but I removed it to make it 8th Street legal. So I thought, it's a good idea, why don't we use it in this car? So that's that down there, that's going in the garbage. Okay, up here, we've got a clutch master cylinder, line, and bracket. This bracket is in decent condition. Again, nothing wrong with this bracket, but it's covered in a lot of surface rust. And I just want to clean it up, so rather than painting that bracket, we're going to swap it out for this one. I also intend to do a clutch delay valve delete, so might as well do it on this master cylinder, and then we can swap them out. Okay, those were all the parts I grabbed. Everything else is hardware related. So I went through, luckily I've parted out a couple 8th gens, so I have boxes of engine hardware. And I was able to get all the proper bell housing hardware. You can see in the trans here. Here as well, we got the longer and the shorter. There as well. This one was the correct one, and so is this one, but this one has a bit of damaged threads on it. It doesn't thread very nice, so I'm going to chase the threads on that one. And while I'm doing that, they had the wrong starter bolt in. It was way too short, and if the camera focuses, you can see it only went in about a 1/4 inch, and it totally buggered the threads on that first 1/4 inch. So this one will actually give it proper engagement, but I need to try and fix those threads first. And on that note, this being the transmission side engine mount here, these bolts were the wrong bolts used. Well, these are the correct bolts, which I sourced, but the bolts that were in here were wrong before. And they messed up the threads on this one, and potentially this one, because this one wasn't even in. This one seems okay. So I need to try and chase the threads on both of those holes as well. The other bolt I sourced was this bolt. It was completely missing. So that is the correct bolt for there. And yeah, I think that basically gives us a complete list of all the parts I need to slap this thing back together. So let's start by fixing damaged threads. Okay, I've got an M10 by 1.25 tap here, which is the size for the 14mm bolts. Okay, our 14mm bolts are all fixed up and threading very nicely. That's a win. The problem I have just run into though is I don't have the right tap. This is an M12 by 1.25. I have a 1.5. Which wouldn't be a big deal if I lived in the city. I could just run and grab one, but I don't think I'm gonna get one here locally. So I think I might sacrifice one of these bolts and try and make a thread chaser out of it. Okay, I built a tap out of just a 17mm bolt, put some flutes in it, and I heated it and quenched it in oil, so hopefully it's a little harder. I don't know, these threads look pretty messed up, but let's see what we can do. Alright guys, that was a success. It actually worked really good. I felt it cutting like a tap does, and the flutes pulled out the garbage, and I was just able to successfully hand thread in a normal bolt to full depth and back out. So awesome. But the mounts in the frame are going to be like hardened steel, so I don't know if this will be strong enough, but let's give it a go. Alrighty fellas, I spent probably another 20 minutes working on that one hole after what you guys seen. This one's 100%, this one's 100%, this one, I don't know, it's probably 75-80%. It's decent enough I can use it. I think I'm actually gonna use the bolt I made into a chaser for that hole, since I put all the effort into chasing it with this one. This one seems the happiest in there, so I think I'll just reuse it. It's the right shank length and everything, so the only difference is the head's a bit different, but I'll be satisfied with that. It'll hold on good and tight. Our less rusty motor mount is in, and yes, I did install the pain in the butt 10mm bolt that holds in the ABS line clip. As you just seen there, I threw on a quick coat of black paint. I didn't have very much. It was just the very end of a caliper paint can. The nice thing about that stuff is it's very chemical resistant. You can basically spray it over anything and it'll stick. So I gave each side of the subframe a nice coating. Looks pretty good. That'll protect it. And then any areas I didn't hit, we will use fluid film, some lanolin wax and whatnot, and we'll get it in all the good areas. So nothing rusts any further. This thing's pretty loose. I don't love how loose the shift fork is. Changed out to a different spring and it feels a little tighter on there. There is still some play, but it does seem better, so I'm happy with that. Let's slap it on the motor. Alrighty fellas, you just seen we've got the trans mounted. All the bell housing bolts are just snug with the exception of the back two. They can be a little hard to get to in the car, so I've tightened those. The rest will be tightened in the car. We installed our engine harness. Now this is the engine harness that came with this motor, because as you know, if you watched the previous episode, the harness that came with the motor in the car was very bastardized by whoever did the clutch last. So we got the harness installed as well as our beauty covers. Also, I cleaned up the half shaft and half shaft cover, so that is installed. And yeah, I think we're ready to drop this thing in the engine bay. Speaking of the engine bay, you'll see I did do that quick paint job with some caliber paint, but I ran out, so I just took some lanolin black fluid film wax and put it in a few other areas just to make sure it's all protected. So engine bay's clean and prepped, motor's clean and prepped. Let's bring them together. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you how I go about doing this. I've got my motor all hooked up on the hoist, it's ready to go. But I like to set out my motor mounts with the bolts that go to them in the proper spots. I have it all laid out like this, exactly where everything goes, so that when the motor's hanging in there and I'm kind of fighting with it, I'm not running around looking for the right bolt and accidentally maybe putting in the wrong bolt or can't find the mount or whatever. I also lay out the tools I'm going to need, and then everything's just there ready for me to grab as I'm putting the motor in. The other thing I did was I went through and I cleaned all these bolts that needed cleaned. Some of them were a little covered in corrosion, and I went through and I anti-seized every single one. So everything will go together nicely and come apart again in the future if someone needs to. I also did the old patented Rob cutting board motor mounts. Did that to the lower and to the upper torque mount. That'll give it some stiffness, which will make this car shift nice and crispy when you're ripping on it in the higher RPMs. So you won't have that motor shifting around on you. Pun intended? I don't know. Anyways, I'm ready. Let's put it in there. And just like that, we have the motor again. All the mounts are in, and get this. Every mount has every bolt that it was supposed to have. Apparently people don't do that. But I want to yank on this thing and give you guys a demonstration of my stiffened torque mounts. Okay. See? The whole car's shaking. No movement on the motor. She's good and solid. So yeah, that is awesome. Big step done. The next thing I'm going to do is I have a clutch master cylinder over here. I'm going to do a delay valve delete on this. I'm not going to do it in this video. I'm going to have a separate video to show you guys how to do that. I feel like it's something that every 8th gen owner should do. It's not very difficult, but I want to put out a video just so people can see how to do it. So anyways, let's cut to that being installed, because the first thing I want to do on this car before I put anything else together, I want to bleed the clutch, make sure the clutch feels like it's traveling and functioning properly. And if so, then we will continue with bolting the rest of the crap back on this thing. All right, the clutch is all installed. I managed to bleed it by myself. I just used my little bottle or the hose method and pumped away. You can see it's pretty dank fluid, but got her bled out good, fully flushed. I threw some cavity wax on all these little pads to keep them from rusting. Threw the grounds on while I was in that area. Also put some cavity wax over that. Installed this ground properly because it was, you know, zip tied last time. So yeah, clutch seems to function like it did before I took it apart, so I'm happy. Let's start throwing this car together. All right, I'm going to be here for about 17 years tightening up the starter connection, so I'll see you then. All right, the AC is an unknown for me on this car. I just know that it did not work. I do not know why it didn't work. When I took the car apart, it had no charge, so that's probably thing number one. But I want to check and see if the... I want to check it here and see if the clutch is engaging on it. It's fairly simple to test. We're just going to hook voltage up to it directly from this battery, pull in the mag, see if it works. If it doesn't, we're going to take it off and probably remove the shim, because there is a certain gap spec that's supposed to be here. And generally, by this day and age, the gap is getting too big for the magnet to pull in properly. So there's a shim you can remove, which tightens up that gap. And it often gets covered in a lot of rust and corrosion in there too, which doesn't help the magnet grab. So let's give it a quick test and see how it does. Okay, I already preset this up. I've got the power wrapped to the connection on the coil, and I'm just gonna ground this right out onto the chassis, and we should be able to hear it thunk in once the trucks drive by. Okay. There's a very light clunk, but yeah, it does not grab the pulley. I can spin them individually with it pulled in, so no good. It's 14 mil. Would you stop falling over? Thanks, hey? Oh yeah, look at that corrosion. That AC pulley ain't been used in a long time, friends. A long time. Compressor turns over freely by hand, so that should be okay. But yeah, there's a little shim I was talking about. We'll get rid of that, which will... I really wish this thing stopped rocking and rolling. Why do you hate me? I'm trying to show the people. Okay, shim, gone. That will help this suck in tighter. Potentially even too tight. But I'm gonna spend some time and clean all this corrosion off, because this is exceptional. Okay, I got the surfaces on both of those cleaned up. I mean, as best I can. The pitting is pretty deep on this side. Not as bad on that side, but should be decent. So I was just test fitting it without the shim here. And you can hear it's making contact. So I think I will have to still run the shim. The thing is, like, judging by the amount of rust on this thing, AC must not have worked or been used very long. Like, I would say this car has been run for years and years and years and years without AC. So it's possible that the surfaces of these just aren't that worn down. So I'm gonna put it back together with the shim, and we'll give her a shot. Yeah, they grab good enough now that I can't spin them separately. Oh, I can once my wire falls off. But yeah, I'm gonna call that a win. It does grab good enough. Down the road, perhaps once it starts to wear in a bit more and clean them surfaces, may need to remove the shim, but for now I think that's going to work. But yeah, a little side note, things like this, like people always think it's so simple, just, oh, slap a new motor in your car, you're good to go. But on a project like this, if you're trying to do things right and fix all the little stuff, these little things take a lot of time. And it's a type of stuff I find hard to film, which sucks because you guys end up losing a lot of detail that went into the car. But like, I just spent half an hour sanding one side of that clutch, and it's like, obviously not exciting content, but it's the reality of the things you have to do when you're trying to resurrect a car like this. So anyways, I don't know what my point is. I'm just saying. Okay. We can continue to put things back together again. Pulley, idiot. These are our original battery box bolts, and you can see they're all in pretty tough shape. One of them had a stripped head, I think, when I took it out. I dug through my bolt bin and I found 4 nice silver ones that are the same bolt, so we'll use those to install the battery box. Alrighty fellas, I went and did a few things off camera there. You guys last seen me put in the ram air intake duct thing, and I hooked up the upper tube piece. Just a tip, when you go to hook this up, leave the bolts out of the bracket, because you actually have to push it down onto the lower hose and then turn it counterclockwise for it to lock in, and then it's easier to put the bolts in after. If you guys watched the disassembly video, remember this bracket was super mangled, so I straightened that back to where it's supposed to be, so the wiring clip is clipped in now. Hooked up our fuel line and a couple of our vacuum lines, booster line, etc. And I put the bracket back in the transmission here so I can run our wiring over. I'm just leaving that for now, because the next thing I'm going to tackle is the shifter cables and the shift bushings. So I have a set of hybrid racing shifter bushings that I bought for my 9th gen and never installed. So we'll throw them in this car. But it is getting late at the moment. I'm gonna go in the house, get some sleep, so I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. And we'll continue working on this thing. Maybe it'll actually run tomorrow. Alrighty fellas, it's the next day. Getting a little bit of a late start. It's 2:10 in the afternoon. But I'm feeling confident that we can make this thing run today. So most of everything is done up top. We've got a little bit of wiring to do. Shift bushings, intake, all the fluids obviously. Underneath I gotta hook up the exhaust and the axles, and then I think we can start it. But I want to start this video off with doing these shift bushings. Get these out of the way. One. Ow. Two.
Ooh, pretty. It's so pretty.
Just like that. She's seated in. Now, I know a lot of people have found my channel from my shifter issue video, which I never meant to be as popular as it was. And I never was really trying to call out Acuity, but that bushing, people are saying in the comments it was a shifter cable issue, it wasn't a bushing issue, but that Acuity bushing, you had to really put effort into moving the center collar, which is why I think it caused the bind. Like, look at this thing. It just flops around like nothing. Do it with my finger. So I still stand by the fact that the Acuity bushing was the root of the problem, whether it was an installer's fault or Acuity's, I don't know. I personally do not have an issue with Acuity. I have an Acuity short shifter in my 9th gen SI, and I absolutely love it. So that's all I gotta say about that. These little keychain ring things are strange. Never used a clip like this before. They seem relatively easy to work with, but they're not what I thought they were. There we go. Install our RC body clips. Boop. And boop. Sure, there's a lot of play on there. It's supposed to be like that. That one doesn't. Weird. Okay, when we pulled the ECU out of this car, it didn't have the correct hardware, but I dug through all my 10mm bolt stuff and I found 2 more of the correct bolts. It did have 1 correct one, so I wasn't completely wrong. All right, with the axles in, we can now go ahead and move on to fluids. I left all the suspension and brake lines and stuff still flopping here because all that needs a lot of work and attention. But I'm not concentrating on that right now. We'll come back to that when we do the spring install. So I've got my twisty bendy funnel in there. We've got 2 liters of Honda MTF we're gonna put in. We've got 6 liters of Honda 530, and then we've got a jug of the Honda 5050 coolant. So let's get to putting all that fluid in here, and we can install the airbox and the battery, and then I think we'll be good for a first start, hopefully. I might, when it comes time to first start, I might disable it somehow so it won't start. I'll crank it a little bit so we can build some oil pressure, seeing as how this engine has sat without oil for quite some time. And then we'll try and start it. I don't think my basketball career is going anywhere. So I actually ran out of coolant. 1 jug was not enough, probably because the entire engine is empty. So I actually have a buddy who's coming back from the city. He's going to bring me a jug. So I will continue that when he gets here. But for now, I got a few things to clean up. I got to clean up this battery box. I've got a Can-Am filter here, a used one. As you can see, very used. But good on that side. So I got to clean that out. Clean up the airbox, clean up the airbox tubes, everything. Get it all nice spick and span. So we can throw it in there. And then hopefully by that time we'll have coolant. We can put the rest of the coolant in it. And then let's see if it runs. Alright guys, you can see I got the battery installed here. The battery base is in. I haven't put the battery surround or clamp on yet. I will have to take this battery out to replace the high beam bulbs, which I don't have. So this will be coming out again. It's just in there temporarily. I've got the intake tube cleaned, the intake base cleaned up and oiled that filter. Also, I dug in and got appropriate hardware because that bolt was missing before. That one is the wrong one, and I don't even recall if it had that either. So got that going up good. Got the tube and the top cleaned here. Just got to throw those on. Alrighty fellas, I'm ready to try and start it. The coolant is still only half full, but we're not going to run it very long. I just pulled the spark plug cover off, and I disconnected all the coils, and I cranked the car over until I got oil pressure, which took about, I cranked it for about 5 seconds, maybe 4 times. Waited for the oil pressure light to go off. now that I know the motor's got oil pressure, I think we're ready to see if it'll start. So let's see what she does. Oh yeah, she flashed right up. So we got our DRL code because I don't have high beams in it, and we have an SRS code because I stole the seat and SRS stuff from this car for the red one. So we'll deal with that at a later date. But no check engine lights. Let's go make sure it's not leaking anywhere. A little bit of moisture in the exhaust there, no big deal. Motor sounds nice and quiet. You can hear the injectors, but motor sounds quiet. Not seeing any leaks. Yeah, she's happy. Still at high idle, no lights on. Sweet! Victory! I think that's going to be it for this video though, guys. It's probably a long one already. I'm glad we've got it running. Motor swapped out, good to go. Now we got about 75,000 other things to fix. So catch you guys in the next one. Consider subscribing and have a good one. Peace out.